Hey everybody, it is me, Dan Phelps. It's been a while since I made one of these update videos, so I figured it's about time to tell you what's going on with me. We just wrapped up uh, what in the Pacific Northwest was an epic snowstorm, and it's epic not in comparison to anything that happens like in the Midwest or in the Northeast, but we're just so underprepared for it out here, and the infrastructure doesn't exist. So a couple of days, about a foot of snow really grinds everything to a halt. So it's just life. I had a bunch of stuff planned for this last week that I'll tell you about in just a moment. And, for snow days for the kids and being basically stuck in the house and all of the stuff where I live being closed, it just sort of it went out the window, and you got to learn to roll with that. Something that I am working on. As an artist, I am not the most organized human out there, which is probably no surprise, and there's probably a lot of you that can relate. That planning ahead is not really my strongest suit. I do well with how do we feel right now? What should we do next? Trying to figure out what's happening in a month or even in 2 weeks from now is a challenge for me, and that works out some of the time. When it doesn't work out is when I've waited till the last minute to start on something, and then something like a foot of snow happens, and I end up, wishing that I were more ahead of the game. So part of my goals and my next thing I'm working on is planning ahead for stuff, which includes something I'm really excited about. For a while, I've been brewing the idea of doing an e-course or a digital course, which is sort of an outgrowth of what I do here on my YouTube channel. I started this YouTube channel about a year ago with a commitment, I guess a little over a year ago by now, but I committed to post about once a week. As that time went on and I was sort of trying to figure out, like, what am I going to make all of these videos about, it evolved. I did some gear related things. I'm proud of Super Awesome Pedal Show because I think it's really fun to showcase some of my favorite pedals and things that I like in a performative kind of way, less of a demo setting. I've done some lessons. I did a series called the Improviser's Toolkit, which I think came out really well. But I've gotten a lot of great response from people on the topic of tone, and not just how gear works, but starting to really listen to your sound, think about the sound that you're creating on the instrument, and developing a deeper connection to it. I think that electric guitarists are we are some of the few instrumentalists on the planet who can start playing without tone generation being a sort of integral part of what we do. If you're learning to play the timpani or, I don't know, the clarinet, even just learning how to make a sound and make a pleasant sound, a deep, rich sound on the instrument is part of learning. And with the electric guitar, you get a guitar, you get an amp, you get a fuzz pedal, and all of a sudden you're just making noise, and you can be in a band right away. So I think electric guitarists are a little stunted. I know that I was for a really long time. I was really into gear, but I didn't have a good grasp or handle or relationship to how to get musical and expressive sounds out of the stuff that I had. It took me a long time to develop that, and I would say even in the last 5 years I've come a long way. So I started hatching the idea for an e-course, something that could be more in depth, that could be presented as a multi-module, multi-video thing that would walk people through a process of how to think about the instrument, how to think about how the guitar and the amp are really tied together, that the instrument that we play is not just the electric guitar, but the instrument we play is the guitar and the amp together, because you can't do anything without something to make the guitar louder. And I've been talking to people about it and doing some research, and I'm stoked. I think it's going to be really good. So I'm excited because I'm going to start shooting that in about a week from the filming of this video. And I'm excited to get into it. I've been thinking about it a lot. I've started drawing a lot more. I used to draw when I was a kid, and I started drawing what I think of as these pamphlets. They're sort of diagrams and thoughts about sound and tone and how we think about that stuff. And that's been part of also developing the concepts and language that I'm going to use in this course. If you want to check out the pamphlets, you can go to my website, danphelps.com/learn, or click on the Learn tab, and you can get them there. I have one that is about learning to play the dynamics of your entire rig, which is not just volume dynamics, but it's textural dynamics, distortion dynamics. I have another one that is about learning to consider and control everything that happens after the sound leaves your speaker, because oftentimes the final destination for your sound is not, wherever you're sitting a couple of feet away from your amp, but it's through a microphone, it's through a PA, or you're recording or playing a live gig, and someone sitting 20 feet away from you is hearing the guitar. And I just completed another one that's all about the volume pedal, kind of the why you would use a volume pedal and how I use it. So check those out. They're fun. I've enjoyed making them, and I've really enjoyed the response to them. And just keep your ears peeled for everything about my course, Learning to Listen, which I'm going to be diving into deeply here in the next week or so. Something else I wanted to talk about, the reason I'm holding this guitar, one of my beloved Saul Cole custom guitars, it was kind of sidelined for a minute. So the story of this guitar, which I've definitely, I've done a video about it before. I bought this guitar from the great David Torn some time ago, and I probably owned it and played it for close to a year before I even really thought about changing the strings that were on it. When I got it from David, the strings were in that beautiful spot where they were worn in, and they kind of had a lot of vibe, and just everything about the guitar was so cool that I didn't want to mess with it. I get superstitious about that stuff sometimes, like, if I change a pot, change the string, mess with the setup, that somehow the magic is going to go away, which is irrational, but true about me. And so finally the strings kind of reached that point where they stopped working and they weren't really playing in tune, and it was getting weird with the whammy bar. So I said, fine, I'm going to change the strings on this thing. So I sat down to do it. This guitar has these older LSR tuning heads on it, which are very cool, but they're no longer made, and there is not a lot of information about them on the internet. There's almost a complete lack of information about them on the internet. So I started changing strings, and they have a very interesting mechanism where there's sort of a ball bearing that comes out and traps the string inside the post that you thread it through, and that's what locks the string in place. And I just could not get some of those ball bearings to let loose. Some of them worked great, and some of them hung on to the string, so all of a sudden I couldn't restring the guitar. And this is sort of a bad fault of mine, but if I hit a roadblock sometimes on a project like this, and it's not mission critical to fix it right away, it can sit for a really long time. I eventually figured out through Saul Cole that there is a small hex screw inside the barrel of these tuners, and that you could potentially loosen the ball bearing from there. I tried every hex wrench that I had, and none of them fit. So that was another barrier. I looked around online and tried to find any sort of information about what hex wrench went in there, and there's nothing. I really should make a website or a page on my website dedicated to this, just to help anybody who is in the same boat. So finally what I did is I broke down and got on Amazon and ordered a couple of like every size inch and metric hex wrenches, because I didn't know if it was in inches or in meters, and got those and tried every one until I found the right one, which, pro tip, I put a piece of tape on the right one so that I always know which one it is in the hole set. Finally got this thing restrung. Definitely wasted a few strings in the process as I was like figuring out how it all worked, and you have to loosen them and then on each one tighten the ball bearing back down, and it was sort of this epic thing. But I'm stoked because I finally have this guitar back in the rotation, and it's an amazing instrument. And I put a set of Gabriel Tenorio String Company strings on here. He's a guy out of LA who hand makes these great guitar strings that have a really consistent sound over their lifespan, and they're really vibey. I know it's weird to say that about strings, but if you think about strings, they're like the vocal cords of the guitar, you know. And if you don't think that what strings you put on the guitar really matter, then, you know, I'd encourage you to mess with like putting some pure nickel strings on there, or put flat wounds on there, and tell me that that's not like an entirely different instrument for you. So Gabriel Tenorio String Company, this is a custom set gauged 11 through 48 that he made for me, with some shorter winds at the end that work for my floating tremolo scheme, and I think they sound really good. So yeah, that I might be deceiving myself, but I think that they are very harmonious sounding when the chords ring out. There's a lot of cool layers of frequencies that kind of ride over top of each other. So stoked to have this thing back and rocking. And if you're curious about this weird looking guitar, I'll put a link to the Guitar Friends video that I did about this. And otherwise, you know, it's just keeping on with being married and being a dad, and continuing to press into the pursuit of excellence in all of those things, which is it's not a straight upward line, my friends. It's a lot of learning, failure, reapplication of my focus, and all those things. And as I get older, I just continually try to defeat my deficiencies and overcome them, while also accepting the fact that there is grace for me in the struggle. And yeah, just the struggle of being a more complete and more responsible human being. I'm sure you can't relate because you're probably awesome, but that's my thing. I'm planning to run another marathon, and probably a 50K this year. And I'm probably going to try to take up swimming as well, because I have a long-term physical goal that I really want to meet. And yes, I have some gigs coming up. I'm excited to be playing a show, 2 shows, with the fantastic Mike Baguetta, who is a brilliant guitar player who lives in Knoxville, Tennessee, and is just he's a genius, one of my favorites. And he did a record with Jim Keltner and Mike Watt, which is really good. That's coming out soon, and I'll be playing with him in Portland and Seattle. And I'm going to be playing drums in a band that I have with my friend Chris Benson, who builds the beautiful Benson amps that I use. And we started a project a couple of months ago that is sort of dedicated to our love of 90s guitar rock. So I'm playing drums in that band. Chris is playing guitar and writing and singing, and we're going to play a couple of shows over the next few months too. So I'm stoked. I'm getting a variety of studio time, music creation time, and live music time. So it's a good period for me. So thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to me ramble on. And if you want to find out more about me, as always, danphelps.com. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can find me on Instagram. I am at danpmusic, and I'm pretty active there, as well as on Facebook and all the places. And Yeah, I think that that is the summary of what is up right now. I should also add that I've been doing live streams as an experiment to see what it's like to show up live and interact with people. So keep an eye out for me on Instagram, on Facebook, and I've been doing a live improvised ambient music hour on YouTube. That's been really fun. And that sort of goes to just here's the PS of this message. In this day and age when you can do anything on your own, you can record music, you can stream live video, you can self-release your album or book or whatever. That's amazing, but the downside is you have to do everything. And so I've definitely had a couple of very frustrating nights trying to figure out how to get quality video and audio to stream to YouTube and be in sync on the playback. It's been driving me nuts. So just if anybody out there, if you're trying to do something new, trying to stretch yourself, trying to learn about something that you don't know about that's not in your wheelhouse, please take heart, because man, it's tough. There's grace for you, and all you can do is fail and learn again and reiterate. Fail, reiterate, fail, reiterate until you get it right. So that's me. I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon. Peace out.